Before we move into the first session for today, I'd like to briefly speak about NGAA's research partner, the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for Children and Families Across the Life Course is commonly known as the Life Course Centre. And the Life Course Centre is a national research centre which investigates the ways in which deep and persistent disadvantage endures within families and across generations. The Life Course Centre manages an academic network across the universities of Queensland, Western Australia, Melbourne and Sydney, with international academic partners and other groups such as the NGAA. And the centre aims to generate evidence-based research to develop new knowledge, technology and practices to benefit those living in or at risk of disadvantage. So I encourage you to look at that website, which is being shown on the screen, and there will also be a notification on the event platform. Today we are fortunate to have researchers associated with the Life Course Centre participating in our panel sessions across the 3 days of the symposium, and as I said, as well as today. And today we will have joining us Guyon Kalb and Joydy Mix. I'll introduce them properly at the start of the panels, but a special welcome to you both, thank you. And I invite everyone to look at their very impressive bios on the speakers list. So let's move into our session, addressing barriers to participation in at-risk communities. And it's really picking up some of the themes that Kim's keynote presentation started to touch on. On top of the social and economic challenges that all communities are facing, it is fair to say that there are particular structural and geographic barriers with growth areas that can impact participation by people in certain sectors of the community. And by participation we mean employment as well as accessing services. These barriers especially have consequences for our at-risk members of the community. In this first session today, we will hear about research into gender inequality in growth areas and also creative ways of engaging with children and young people who are using skate parks. Our first council presentation today is Building Gender Equity in Outer Growth Area Suburbs, and it's presented by Liz Carroll. Liz is a community safety planner at the City of Whittlesea, which is in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, the outer northern suburbs. Unfortunately, Liz is unable to join us today, so we have pre-recorded her session and we will show this now.
I would like to recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri Wurrung clan as the traditional owners of this place. I'm currently working from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung and respectfully acknowledge all the traditional custodians of the lands on which you are all living and working. The Gender Equity in Employment project was funded by the Free From Violence Local Government Preventing Violence Against Women grants in 2018. We published a report in February earlier this year to provide an account of the work completed from 2018 to 2020. And you can find all of the films and the information I've referenced within this presentation online. The project was inspired by research from the University of South Australia Centre for Work and Life and the book Time Bomb, Work, Rest and Play in Australia Today, published in 2012, written by Professor Barbara Pocock, Natalie Skinner and Philippa Williams. Time Bomb articulates the inequitable experiences of work and care and the disproportionate negative impacts of women living in growth areas. The research in this book was undertaken in master plan communities across Australia, including metropolitan Melbourne. Our project centred around two main ideas. Firstly, that Victoria's growth areas have systemic issues that reinforce gendered roles of care and work, such as the highest proportion of family households, 58% of the population growth, but only 34% of the jobs, a higher proportion of residents that commute between 2 and 3 hours a day. From a gendered perspective, this extreme commute time means women are trading their careers and financial independence for jobs that are closer to home and caring responsibilities, whilst men are trading their caring responsibilities and time with family for long commutes and higher skilled and paid jobs. Professor Barbara Pocock, in the book Time Bomb, terms this experience of women the spatial leash. She notes, The location of work in relation to home affects who can engage in types of work. The separation of residential areas from centres of work perpetuates gender stereotypes that constrain and disadvantage women in particular. Women with children are on a tighter spatial leash than men, especially when their children are young and they want to be accessible to them in the event of illness or other needs. The second focus area for the project was that growth areas have consistently higher rates of family violence, including incidents where children are present. Vic Health's community indicators reveal they are also more likely to have lower support for gender equality in relationships. We know that limits to women's independence, socially and economically, increases the probability of violence against women. Social structures and environments that challenge these limitations and enhance women's economic independence and security are protective against violence against women and support the social conditions necessary for gender equality. This slide summarises the steps we've undertaken for this project. The grant funding enabled us to engage SGS Economics and Planning to map census data of gendered employment patterns, which I'll talk a bit more later. We wanted to ensure we focused on women's lived experiences in this project, and so we engaged local women to better understand their experiences and subsequently developed 5 case studies to illustrate this, in addition to a couple of films, one of which I'll show you now. In this film, we wanted to present women's experiences of employment and care responsibilities to help illustrate the issues and the opportunities for change.
I have a graduate certificate in writing and literature. Before that, I studied and got a bachelor in writing and publishing, and I also have a diploma in professional writing and editing as well. At the moment, though, I am employed as an administration officer at a school. I actually live in the town of Whittlesea, so it's about 45 minutes drive still down Plenty Road, which is a bit of a nightmare. But it is still within Whittlesea, which is probably kind of as good as I could get at the moment. My care responsibilities are that I have 3 teenage sons. The youngest is 14 and he is on the autism spectrum. All the jobs that I want to do are in the city. All the ones that I've looked at to do with, say, communication, publishing and editing, they're all central city or they are over east. So they take at least an hour and a half by public transport to get to. Trying to weigh that up, I guess, and I found that if I had to commute, I'd have to get up and leave before 7 o'clock in the morning, and I probably wouldn't get home till after 7 o'clock at night. They're always full-time, all of these jobs. So I had to weigh up and decide whether I was going to follow, I guess, the careers that matched my qualifications or whether I was going to work closer to home. And I just in the end decided that it was better off working close to home, because then I had the energy and the time to better commit to my family, because ultimately I find they're my main priority. I mean, I love my kids and I want to be there for them, and I want to be, during this time when they're at school, to be able to help them with their homework and to make sure that they have everything they need.
This is an example of the information you can find on the interactive data dashboard that SGS produced for us. All Greater Melbourne LGAs are included. I don't have the time to go through this in any great detail, but you can view a recording of a presentation of this data by Alison Holloway, Chief Executive Officer, Principal and Partner SGS Economics and Planning, on our website, and the links are also shared with you. A range of indicators were mapped by SGS by both location and gender across employment patterns. What we found was that women living in growth areas were more likely than men to have tertiary qualifications, but they were less likely to be employed in jobs that reflected that level of qualification. And this was more pronounced in growth areas than in the inner areas. We also found that they were more likely than men to be earning less than $65,000 for full-timers, whether they are working in their qualification or not. The analysis showed a greater proportion of tertiary qualified women earning less than the median income for men, but that the gap was greatest for the growth areas than in the inner areas. We also held a forum bringing together key stakeholders to talk about the levers that local government might have to improve gender equity in employment in growth areas. We showed a film similar to what you just saw. SGS presented their data and the key themes I just mentioned. And we were extremely lucky to get Professor Barbara Pocock, who spoke about her research in master plan communities across Australia during her time at the University of South Australia Centre for Work and Life. You can view a recording of this on our website as well. We did also create a highlights film from this whole event, which brings together the key elements. I encourage everyone to have a look. These are the recommendations developed from the work undertaken at this event. I'm working on integrating a lot of this into our work at Whittlesea, and I thought I might just quickly run through a few examples of how. In regard to the recommendation 1, we are looking at integrating a co-working space into a new community centre we're developing in Mernda, and working through what that looks like in terms of models of best practice, childcare provision, technology, user agreements, fees, council support required, and so on. For recommendation number 4, I was able to summarise findings from this research and consultations, and this has been considered in our recent organisational redesign process. This redesign process has really improved a gender balance in our leadership, and recruitment practices are improving, along with key policies and procedures. It's not perfect, and we haven't been able to get prioritising local people over the line just yet, but there's a definite improvement in our selection processes. This restructure also provided a significant increase in resources for our economic development team, which is now its own department, and we're really looking forward to reaping the benefits of that and tackling recommendation number 2 in more depth. The project continues to inform key pieces of their work, including the recently adopted investment attraction strategy. In regards to the advocacy items, recommendations 5, 7, 8 and 9, well, they're a bit more longer term and require a lot more fleshing out with our partners. But there are definite ways we can improve a gender perspective in these and the current work we're undertaking. With the introduction of the Gender Equality Act and local councils being defined entities under this, more of these recommendations will become possible. I personally would love to work on recommendation number 6, gender responsive and equitable budgeting. I think there are some significant impacts to be had by taking that approach. Before I finish, it is worth noting that this work was undertaken before COVID. Since then, we have seen huge changes to the ways we work and the acceptance of flexible work, working from home, etc., and the gendered impacts and benefits of this. So we'll continue to adapt our approach and respond to the changing employment environment. Importantly, NGAA's commissioned research last year found that there is potential to increase workforce participation among those not currently in the workforce, particularly women, by providing the option to work from home. You can read more about that in the report Close to Home, the opportunities and benefits of working from home in outer urban growth areas. So thank you for having me, and please do get in touch if you want to discuss anything further.
Thank you very much, Liz, for that presentation. And again, another really insightful piece of research commissioned by a Growth Area Council. For me, I think the quote from Laura, who was featured on the video, that it's as good as I can get at the moment, really says it all and expresses probably the frustration that many people, women and men, experience who are trying to balance family responsibilities and work in our outer suburbs. Liz's presentation, like all our presentations, will be available on the website, and the links will be made available as well.